In Limbus Company, we currently have 3 identities that are all members of the Index. Namely, the Index Proselyte, Paperslip Faust, the Index Proxy, Efflorest Ego, Procreation, Don Quixote, and the House of Spiders, the Index Nursefather, Yi Sang. Each of these identities bring interesting and unique mechanics to the table, benefiting managers that decide to make use of them in their teams. The mechanics and how to play them can be a bit vague and confusing at times. So I'm gonna make a guide on how to properly use the strengths, weaknesses, and the neat tricks of the Index. Going in release order, starting with Faust, moving on to Don and Yi Sang after, before ending it with an overview of the IDs as a whole. For each ID, I'll be going into detail regarding their kit, their unique statuses, their strengths, weaknesses, and their performance in combat, as well as their preferred teams. We'll be starting with Faust, the first released Index identity, and a solid baseline for explaining all the mechanics and statuses that the Index shares. Faust's stats are all average, having decent health, average speed, but sporting a +1 defense level. She's strong against slash, but is fatal to pierce. Her skills consist of a 2-coin Sloth skill 1, a 3-coin Pride skill 2, and a 3-coin Gloom skill 3, as well as a 3-coin Gloom counter. The usual next course of action is to go into detail of each individual skill, but I will be skipping over the details of each skill for now, instead looking at her passives and the effects associated with them, as her skills interact uniquely with the effects and passives, and understanding them will make how to play the character a bit more clear. Her first passive, Prescript delivered on paper slips, is a passive that is always active, meaning you do not have a sin requirement for its effects to take effect. The passive is the core of what it means to be an Index identity, as it encompasses the Prescript mechanic. Let's take a look at what it does. Turn start, gain Prescript, Paperslip 1-4 based on Grace of the Prescript on self. Inflict the Prescript's target on a random enemy, with it being a random part in focus encounters. Apply Mark of the Prescript to base attack skills on this unit's dashboard, 1 per slot up to 2 skills max. At 6+ Grace of the Prescript, the Mark of the Prescript prioritizes skill 3. And thankfully, all of the above effects do not trigger when Faust is basically unable to act, whether it be staggered, or if the enemy dies, or so on. So that's quite a few effects for a single passive, but before we go over them, let's take a quick look at her next passive, as it gives us more details on how she acquires some of these buffs on herself. Her second passive, the Will of the Prescript, is also always active and similarly does not require any resource or residence to activate. The details are as follows. On turn end, if the Prescript was executed this turn, heal 4 SP and gain 1 Grace of the Prescript, only once per turn. When executing the Prescript, if the main target has the Prescript's target, heal more SP and gain 3 Grace instead. At turn end, if the Prescript was not executed this turn, gain 5 Karmic Consequence. At 9 Grace, you don't gain Karmic Consequence. If this unit attempted to execute Prescript at combat start, but basically couldn't, you don't gain Karmic Consequence. And that's the gist of it. Do Prescripts gain Grace? But how do I gain Prescripts? And what do I do to execute them? Why do I want Grace of the Prescript? Well, let's go into details on those effects I skipped over earlier so we can find out. We'll start with Faust's Prescripts. When she enters combat, she immediately gains Prescript Paperslip 1. This Prescript orders you to use a marked skill, or to hit the target with a marked skill. Pretty simple. When you perform it, you gain Grace of the Prescript, up to 3 before you gain a new Prescript, with a different order. Let's quickly go over the other effects associated with Prescripts before looking at the other orders. Grace of the Prescript simply grants you 1 extra offense level for every 3 stacks, up to a maximum of 3 extra offense level. This equates to more damage and situationally better clashing. It's minor, but it does make a difference. The Prescript's target is placed on a random enemy or part at turn start. Only one can ever be active, regardless of the number of Index units on the field, and having it means that Index units deal 10% more damage to them. It's a nice bit more damage, but the main benefit being that executing a prescript on a target grants you more grace, which is important. Mark of the prescript does nothing on its own, and simply marks one or two of your skills, depending on how many slots the identity has. Skills become slightly stronger when marked, but more importantly, marked skills are required for executing your prescripts. Karmic Consequence is gained when not executing prescripts. You gain defense level down for every 10 stacks, and 1 fragile for every 20. It stacks up to 100, meaning a potential 10 defense level down and 5 fragile. Now that does sound scary, but building up large amounts of Karmic Consequence is not something that'll ever really happen, even if you actively avoid prescripts for some reason. With all of these in mind, let's take a look at the rest of Faust's prescripts. Prescript 2 orders us to specifically hit with a marked skill. While hitting is not mandatory in the previous prescript, it now is. Much like the previous, you can only gain 3 grace from this prescript, up to 6, before getting a new prescript. The third prescript is unique, as it asks us to specifically use a marked skill 3, or an ego. This has some interesting implications and strategies surrounding it, but let's keep going for now. Like the other prescripts, you can only gain 3 graces from this prescript, bringing the stack up to its maximum, 9. Once you're at 9 graces, you gain the last prescript. This one simply orders you to eliminate all enemies before the next prescript arrives. Gameplay wise, there won't be another prescript, so this is basically telling you that you're off the hook for now, and you can't scale any further using the prescripts, allowing you to use your counter or non-marked skills without gaining consequence. Now that we understand how the prescript system works and the effects surrounding it, let's finally return to Faust's skills and take a look at them. Starting off with Faust's first skill, Unerringly, as the prescript demands, is a sloth skill with 2 coins. With a base power of 3 and a coin power of 4, this skill rolls up to an 11 without conditionals, and up to a 16 when clashing or 15 when simply hitting them, when you do have all of the conditionals. Here, Mark of the Prescript comes into play. If this skill is marked, it gains 1 clash power and deals more damage. Pretty good incentive to use marked skills, even if the prescript system makes it more than worth it already. Faust gains coin power for every 6 poise on self plus sinking on the target, up to a maximum of 2, increasing the skill's coin power to plus 6 per coin. On using the skill, Faust gains 2 poise count. The first coin gives Faust 1 poise potency, and the second coin inflicts 1 sinking potency, inflicting 1 extra if it does crit. Faust's second skill, Undertake the Prescript, again Undertake, is a pride skill of 3 coins. With a base power of 4 and a coin power of 4, this skill rolls up to a 16 without conditionals, but rolls up to a 23 with all conditionals fulfilled. Much like the previous skill, it benefits from being marked, gaining 1 final power when marked. Faust gains coin power based on her poise and the sinking on the target. Faust gains 3 potency and 2 poise count when using this skill. The coins of this skill grant Faust 2 poise potency and inflict 2 sinking potency, inflicting an extra 2 sinking count on the last coin if it crits. Faust's third skill is As the Prescript demands, you will be eliminated. It is a gloom skill consisting of 3 coins. With a base power of 5 and a coin power of 4, this skill rolls up to a 17 without conditionals and rolls up to a 24 with all conditionals fulfilled. This skill benefits greatly from being marked, gaining final power and extra crit damage, making it well worth using when it is marked. Much like her other skills, she gains coin power based on poise and sinking. Uniquely, this skill converts all of its coins into unbreakable coins at 6 or more graces, also dealing another 30% more damage. This allows Faust to hit the enemy with the skill, fulfilling Prescript 3 even if she somehow loses the clash. On use, she gains 3 poise count, but also gains poise potency proportional to the current grace, up to a max of 3. The coins of this skill applies 1 poise potency to Faust, inflicts 2 sinking potency to the enemy, while also inflicting an extra 3 count if it crits with the last coin. The last coin, uniquely, gains a massive damage boost based on Faust's current grace stacks, up to a whopping extra 60% at 9 graces. With all conditionals active, the last coin of the skill can deal a sizable 140% extra damage, allowing Faust to dish out some pretty big numbers. Her last skill is her defense. Prescript granted Prescript Woven Fabric. It is a gloom counter with 3 coins. The base power is 3, with the coin power being 3. Rolling up to a 12 or a 15 with conditionals. This counter grants Faust some shield, 15% of her max HP, which is actually quite nice, but you gain less shield the more Karmic Consequences you have, eventually not gaining any shield at all. On using the counter, she gains 2 poise potency and inflicts 2 sinking potency with the coins. Regardless, this skill won't be seeing much use, if ever. Now, with all of her skills in mind, we can confidently say that the Index and, by extension, Index Faust are a poise-sinking hybrid faction. Yet, looking at Faust's numbers, she doesn't gain much poise, nor does she inflict much sinking. This might lead you to believe that she is, well, really bad for those statuses. And yes, while she does struggle, it isn't the whole picture. I've hidden something from you, her actual passive. Faust's actual passive, Proselyte's Blade, requires 1 Sloth, 1 Pride, and 1 Gloom to activate, and gives her a whole bunch of benefits for interacting with the Prescript system. Deal plus 2% more damage with marked skills for every grace on self, up to 16%. If she has 9 graces, she does 20% damage instead. On hit with a skill against a Prescript target, gain 1 poise and 1 sinking, but only once per turn. However, the amount of times that this can trigger is increased by the amount of graces she has, up to 2 more times at 6 graces. At 9 graces, she inflicts 1 more sinking potency and 1 more poise potency with each application of the effect, so it's quite good. This passive, aside from giving her even more damage, because why not, massively helps her with the sinking and poise situation, letting her gain poise much faster and inflict more sinking. While it doesn't solve her count issues, it does let her scale much faster once she reaches 9 graces, inflicting a good amount of sinking and gaining a respectable amount of poise on every skill. Oh yeah, her support passive. It just lets the first deployed identity deal more damage if multiple sinners target the same slot. It's alright, but not important. Same requirements as a normal passive. So how do you play Index Faust? Despite all these words, conditions, and effects, it's actually pretty simple. You pick the glowing blue skill, you target the guy that's glowing blue, and you hit him with the skill. That completes your Prescript and grants you 3 graces, immediately gaining you your next Prescript and allowing you to scale further. This repeats another turn until you gain your 3rd Prescript, where you have to make a choice. If, by some unlucky circumstance, you rolled Faust's skill 3 early and it got marked, meaning you had to use it to execute the Prescript, you'll have to use an ego. There's 2 distinct choices for which ego you want to use. First choice, whatever the fuck you want, and the second choice, Thoracalgia. In fact, it might even be preferable to use Thoracalgia over your skill 3, even if the skill 3 is available at this stage, as the passive of Thora really helps Faust with her poise count, while also supplying the entire rest of her team with poise count and healing. Once you have Thoracalgia active and 9 graces, Index Faust loses any real complex mechanics to think about, and you just slam your face into the scariest enemy and watch them explode from her billion damage increases. And now that you know how to use Faust individually, the question remains, what team compositions does she really work in? Well, if we go by her 2 main statuses, that being sinking and poise, the obvious choices would be to put her in a team focused on either of those effects. We'll start with looking at her in a sinking focused team. In sinking, you arguably have 3 different types of teams you can run, each of which being focused around a specific ID, and literally all of them being Yi Sang, because he's depressed and, is good with sinking or something, I don't know. The first team we'll be looking at is the Sinking Deluge team. This team focuses heavily on building an absolutely massive sinking stack as quickly as possible, including both count and potency, before Spice Bush Yi Sang snaps his fingers and causes the target to turn into dust. Aside from my personal choice, I don't like this team, it's too reset heavy. Faust simply does not inflict enough sinking to benefit the stack fast enough, as she requires too much time to ramp up to a point where she can positively affect the stack. So she doesn't fit the Deluge team at all. The other main sinking team, which also happened to revolve around Yi Sang, the greedy bastard, is a butterfly sinking team. This isn't a sinking video, so I'm not going to go into exact detail on what butterfly does, but it effectively turns your sinking stacks into slightly worse rupture, allowing it to also do damage to targets with SP. This team wants just enough sinking so that the stack doesn't drop, and lots of coins so that it procs lots of butterfly and does a ton of consistent damage rather than a single nuke like Deluge. Faust definitely fits better in this team than she does Deluge, but still has the issue that most of her skills are count negative or neutral at best. That and her sinking application is quite low until she ramps up. She does have a good amount of coins. Both her skill 2 and skill 3 have free coins that allow her to proc Butterfly quite often. All in all, she isn't a terrible choice for a Butterfly sinking team, but she isn't quite meta, as there are units with similar coin amounts but better sinking applications without having to wait the 3 turns to ramp up. Then there's the last of the trio, and also Yi Sang. Ironically, Index Yi Sang. This team functions effectively exactly like Butterfly, but trades the Butterfly status for the raw power of Index Yi Sang. So everything I said about Butterfly regarding Faust also applies here. Now, the main place Faust wants to be is Poise, and it's where she shines best. Now, Poise is kind of like Charge, where it's kinda just a team cobbled together from identities that have Poise generation. They don't necessarily completely synergize and benefit each other like other teams do through their statuses, barring some specific team setups, like Blade Lineage of course, which all want to be together with their mentor and spam as much pride as possible. In Poise, Faust can comfortably scale with the rest of the index units alongside the rest of your Poise team, eventually reaching her heights and gaining good consistency and damage. This is the team I usually run with Faust, focusing on Poise itself. It does contain a few Walpurgis identities, so I'll show some alternatives on screen you can run if you don't have the full stop duo. Faust is actually one of the few IDs that has some serious Poise support in the form of Thoracalgia, as it supplies the entire team with constant Poise count and healing, making building up Poise and staying alive much easier on longer fights. This is why I put so much emphasis on it earlier. It is genuinely a fantastic ego for just about any Poise related team, even if you're planning on running Poise sinking in mirror dungeons. Speaking of mirror dungeons, how does Faust perform in it? She's fine, good even. Just about anything really works in Mirror Dungeon, unless you're going balls to the wall. Extreme, 60 adversity, you know. Then you'll have to run specific team setups, but I found success with her in Poise and sinking Poise teams. I won't be going in depth with Mirror Dungeons regarding the index because, like I said, basically anything works there. And with that, we're finally done with Faust, and it only took us this long. I don't know, since I'm writing the script beforehand, but editing me must be tired of hearing the word Faust by now. So let's finally move on to our next index identity, the index proxy, Efflorest Ego Procreation, Don Quixote. Don's section will be considerably shorter than Faust's, probably, maybe. I don't have to go into every single little effect with you like Grace, Target, Mark, etc., so I can fully focus on looking at Don and her unique effects, so let's get right into it. Don's stats are all average, having decent health, average speed, but having a +2 to her defense level. Much like Faust, she's strong against Slash, but failed to pierce. Her skills consist of a 2-coin Lust skill 1, a 3-coin Pride skill 2, and a 2-coin Gloom skill 3, as well as a 3-coin Gloom counter as her defense. You might notice that I skipped over like half of her skills, and that she somehow has an extra, different one of each skill type. This is because Dawn is one of the few identities to have an ego that works as a transformation. When Dawn starts combat, she's untransformed as she hasn't activated her ego yet, but once she does, her skills also change, gaining various benefits and changing to suit her new form. Her ego form similarly has a Lust skill 1 with 2 coins, a Pride skill 2 with 3 coins, and a Gloom skill 3 with 4 coins instead of the usual 2, and they're all unbreakable to boot. Finally, her counter turns from a regular counter into a clashable counter, with the usual 3 coins and Gloom. Much like Faust, I'll be skipping over the actual effects of each skill until we've had a look at her passives. Her first passive, Prescript delivered on a device, is almost 1-to-1 of Faust's first passive. Her prescripts are the exact same, in the exact order, and the way she gains them is the exact same. Don't let the unlock fool you, it's all based on grace at the end of the day. The only difference here is the actual mention of unlock, but I'll be going over that when it's relevant. This skill also mentions that if she has unlock 3, she gains Shin Procuration. Yes, this sopping wet cat of a character has the ability to tap into her innermost psyche and gain power from it, somehow. Her second passive, Will of the Prescript, is also basically the exact same as Faust's, except with some words changed around to make you think that it's new. It's not. It works the exact same. Now we're getting to the good stuff. Don's third passive, which is always active. Unlock/Efflorest Ego Procuration. This passive encompasses the unlock mechanic as well as her ego. If you've seen other IDs with similar ego systems, this is going to sound quite familiar, but I'll go over it as if you've never seen an ego before. At turn end, if you have 3 to 9 graces of the Prescript, gain Unlock according to the amount. Unlock 1 at 3 graces, Unlock 2 at 6 graces, and Unlock 3 at 9 graces. You'll notice that you basically gain a level of Unlock for each type of Prescript that you finish, gaining the final level when you finish your last Prescript. The second part of the passive states, if this unit gained Unlock 1, consume 15 SP to enter Efflorest Ego Procuration state. Before consuming SP to enter the state, heal SP to 25 and gain Karmic Consequence equal to SP healed divided by 5. At turn start, after the above checks, if this unit has Unlock and is at 25 plus SP, consume 15 SP to enter the state. If this unit gets staggered before entering Ego state, say no to stagger, unless it's a forced stagger. Gain Faith beyond question while in their Ego state. Turn start, at 0 or less SP, this unit exits Efflorest Ego Procuration state. Yet again, Project Moon does an excellent job at putting a lot of words on a passive, so let me break it down for you so it's more digestible. When you gain Unlock 1 for the first time, as in you finish your first Prescript, you consume 15 SP to enter your Ego state. You then stay in your enhanced state until you drop to 0 or less SP. If you gain up to 25 SP again, you consume 15 SP to re-enter the Ego state. If you don't have enough SP to enter the Ego when you first gain Unlock 1, the game graciously heals your SP up to the required amount, letting you enter Ego and giving you a tiny bit of Karmic Consequence. Being in your Ego state is really what this idea is all about, and you'll be in this state about 90% of the time, as dropping out is honestly not doable unless you're spamming actual Ego skills. The main benefit of being in Dawn's Ego state is gaining the buff Faith Beyond Question and gaining enhanced skills. We'll go over what Faith Beyond Question does when I go over all of her unique effects. We'll be moving on to her next passive for now. Her active passive is I'm gonna sound stupid when I say this, but it's called The Great Magicked Beeper Knoweth My Desire! Don't laugh, this is very important stuff. To activate this passive, you'll need 1 Lust, 1 Pride, and 1 Gloom, owned each. This passive gives Dawn the basic damage increase for having graces, as well as allowing her to heal SP when attacking a target that has the Prescript's target. The SP healing part, along with Unlock, is very important and why she manages to keep her Ego state up so well, even after completing all of her Prescripts. Her support passive, this too is the grace of the great, It requires 3 Gloom residents to activate and heals SP for the ally that has the lowest SP, with a bunch of other stipulations you can read here. It's a good passive, but not one that you'll be using on teams very often, as the teams that can activate this passive reliably usually want Dawn on the field anyway. Let's move on to looking at Dawn's unique effects, that I didn't already go over in Faust's sections. There are mainly 3, that being the Unlock effects, Faith Beyond Question, and Shin. They are all very important to Dawn's overall gameplay and strategies. While she does have unique prescripts, they are, like I said, basically a one-to-one with Faust's prescripts. Use a marked skill, hit a marked skill, use an ego, or a marked skill 3. Simple stuff. We'll look at the various unlock levels first. Unlock 1 gives Dawn 1 defense level and heals her 5 SP at combat end. Unlock 2 gives her 2 defense level and heals her 10 SP at combat end. You'll see a pattern here. Unlock 3 gives Dawn 3 defense level and heals her for 15 SP at combat end. Complex stuff, I know. Unlock, while important to her mechanics, is kind of a gain and forget status. Makes you a bit tankier and gives you a bunch of SP healing at combat end. You don't really gotta worry about it since it's tied to Grace the Prescript, which is something you were already gaining and know how to gain since Index Dawn is a index ID. Still, I can't understate how good it is. Lots of SP healing lets Dawn not only spam ego skills, but also her ego skills. Like her alternate skills she gains when she's in ego state for the identity. You know what I mean. Next is Faith Beyond Question. This one is a bit more to it than just some stat increases. Faith Beyond Question gives min and max speed +1, offense level +2, defense level +2, and she gains 1 more poise potency from all of her base skills. This unit's SP does not drop below -15 from SP loss effects on this unit's base attack skills, and it only has a max stack of 1. So, good stuff, just buffs all around. When Dawn is in her ego state, she becomes faster, gains offense level and defense level, gains more poise, and stops her SP from dropping past -15. Though only with her base skills. Don't expect to be able to pop off that overclocked WoW and not corrode. Not much else to say, it's just a base overall improvement on her stats and is excellent to keep up at all times. Her last unique effect that Dawn has is Shin Procuration. No, I don't know how to pronounce that part in the brackets. The effects are as follows: min and max speed plus 2, offense level plus 1, defense level plus 1, gain 1 more poise potency and count from base skills, deal more damage the lower your health is, max stack of 1. And yes, this effect stacks with Faith Beyond Question as well as Grace the Prescript and Unlock. 2 extra speed, more offense level, and poise generation is absolutely fantastic and makes this unit an absolute beast when she finally gets to this level. The extra damage from lower health is nice but not as important, as she doesn't have any way to reliably reduce her own health, so it's just a bonus for if she does take damage. Shin, stacked alongside Faith, Grace, and Unlock gives Dawn a total of 3 extra minute max speed, bringing her speed up to 6 to 9 from 3 to 6, effectively doubling her speed. 6 more offense level, which more or less equates to 2 clash power and a decent bit more damage. 6 more defense level, which makes her decently more tanky, and 2 more poise potency and 1 poise count from each application of the effect. Absolutely fantastic. With all of these effects, it's safe to say that Index Dawn is an absolute must to field. And we haven't even gotten to her skills yet, so let's take a look at them now. Just for future reference, I'll be referring to her skills as Skill X1 for her non-ego skills and Skill X2 for her ego skills. Her skill 1-1 is called Skull Crushing. It's a lust skill with 2 coins and a base power of 3, a coin power of 4 and rolls up to a total of 11, up to a 16 with conditionals. It gains 1 final power and 15% more damage if marked. Dawn gains coin power from poise on self and sinking on target. On use, Dawn gains 2 poise count, and the skills of this coin inflict 2 sinking and gain Dawn 1 poise potency, implying another 1 count on a critical hit with the second coin. Dawn's skill 1-2 is called Let These Hands Be the Proxy with Which. It's also a lust skill with 2 coins, gaining 1 extra base power compared to 1-1. It rolls up to a 12 and a 16 with conditionals. Unlike skill 1-1, it doesn't gain final power when marked, instead only gaining the damage increase. Dawn gains coin power from poise on self and sinking on target. On use, she gains 2 poise count, and upon finishing the skill, she loses 3 SP. The coins of the skill inflict 2 sinking and 1 sinking count, gaining an extra poise count if the last coin crits. Her skill 2-1 is called Be Thee Silent. It's a pride skill with 3 coins. With a base power of 4 and a coin power of 4, it rolls up to a total of 16, with a 23 with conditionals. It gains final power and more damage if marked. Dawn gains coin power from poise on self and sinking on target, and when using the skill, Dawn gains 3 poise potency. The coins inflict a total of 3 sinking potency and gains Dawn 1 poise count. The last coin also inflicts 1 sinking count on a crit. Index Dawn's skill 2-2 is called Procuration Engrave. Similarly, it's a pride skill with 3 coins, having 5 base power instead and 4 coin power. It rolls up to a 17 and a 23 with conditionals. When the skill is marked, it only gains 10% more damage instead of the final power and damage. Like the rest of her skills, it gains coin power based on poise and sinking. When using the skill, Dawn gains 3 poise potency. After using the attack, she loses 6 SP. The coins of this skill inflict a total of 4 sinking and gains Dawn 1 poise count, inflicting an extra sinking count on crit with the last coin. Dawn's skill 3-1, The Prescript Must Be Fulfilled, is a gloom skill with 2 coins. Having a base power of 6 and a coin power of 6, this skill rolls up to an 18 and a 24 with conditionals. Unlike her other ego skills, it gains coin power upon being marked, also dealing a nice extra 40% damage on crit. Instead of coin power, it gains final power based on poise and sinking, up to 4. If Dawn's unlock stage is at 2 or higher, it turns all of the coins into unbreakable coins and deals 20% more damage for every unlock stage, up to 60%. When using this skill, Dawn gains 3 poise count and poise equal to her unlock stage, up to 3. The coins of this skill inflict 2 sinking and 1 sinking count, while gaining Dawn 2 poise. On crit, with the second coin, it also inflicts another 1 sinking and 1 sinking count. The big one, her skill 3-2, is called Procuration Annihilate. It's a gloom skill with 4 naturally unbreakable coins. With a base power of 5 and a coin power of 3, it rolls up to a 17, increasing up to a 28 if conditionals are fulfilled. If the skill is marked, it does a solid 25% more damage. She gains coin power based on poise and sinking, and when using the skill, Dawn gains poise count and poise. After using the skill, Dawn loses 15 SP. The coins of this skill inflict a total of 4 sinking, inflicting an extra 2 sinking count on crit with the final coin. Uniquely, this coin gains more coin power and damage for every unlock state, up to 120% more damage and 3 more coin power, which turns this coin into a nuke, especially if it crits. Dawn's defense skill 1 is called Prescript Granted, Prescript Woven Fabric. It is a gloom counter with 3 coins and a base power of 3 with a coin power of 3. It rolls a 12 on all heads and up to a 15 with conditionals. Much like Faust, this counter gives Dawn a solid shield, 15% of her max HP on combat start. The shield similarly gets reduced by Karmic Consequence. When using this counter, Dawn gains 2 poise count. This part's important, and we'll get more into why when it comes to how to play Dawn specifically. At turn end, if Dawn does not have unlock, gain unlock 1, change her grace to the prescript stack to 3, and gain 5 consequence for every grace gained this way. The coins inflict 2 sinking potency and gain 1 poise potency in total. Dawn's second defense skill is called Compulsory Unlock. It's a gloom clashable counter with 3 coins, a base power of 4 and a coin power of 3. It rolls a 13 on heads, up to a 16 with full conditionals. The skill gains 1 final power for every unlock stage on Dawn. When Dawn uses the skill, she gains 3 poise. Similarly important, at turn end, if Dawn is at an unlock stage lower than 3, increase the unlock stage by 1, increase the grace to 6 or 9 depending on your current grace, and you gain 5 consequence for every grace gained. And the coins inflict 2 sinking in total. Now then, that was quite a few skills, so I hope you're still following. Much like Faust, Dawn is a poise sinking based identity. However, unlike Faust, Dawn's sinking application is actually pretty decent. Lots of potency and a bit of count here and there. Her poise application is a bit lacking at first, but with her myriad of buffs, ego and shin, her poise application becomes quite good. Though she struggles with poise count once her crits become consistent, that can be solved with Faust's Sloracalgia if you're running them together, but on a pure sinking team, it doesn't matter as much as the sinking stack is there to give her her coin and clash power. Playing her as intended, Dawn only spends about a single turn in her non-ego form, as she only needs to unlock stage 1 or 3 grace to enter it. And if you remember, it only takes using a marked skill on a marked enemy to finish the first prescript and gain 3 grace, as well as unlock stage 1, instantly entering her ego state and staying in it for the rest of the fight. You will recall that Dawn exits the ego state if her SP falls to or below 0, and that all of her ego-based skills, except counter, make her lose SP upon using them. This might lead you to believe that you'll eventually fall out of ego state. This isn't true, as she has a ton of various methods of healing SP outside of winning clashes, allowing her to completely offset and nullify the SP loss from her skills as long as you're using marked skills and hitting marked enemies, following the prescript's will, if you will. Dawn has a bit more nuance to her turn-by-turn choices, based on her attacks and the state of the opponent. So I'll go through the 3-turn cycle turn by turn and explain the choices you'll have to make in these areas. On the very first turn of combat, you'll want to look out for 2 things. 1, what skill is marked, and 2, what enemy is marked. Obviously. Preferably either a skill 1 or skill 2 is marked to be used, as that lets you hopefully save your skill 3 for an easy turn 3. But if a skill 3 is marked, there's no issue in simply using it anyway. If possible, you want the other sinners to try and use skills to activate Dawn's passive, as it allows her to heal more SP and deal more damage. It's not super important, but a good idea to focus on either way if you don't have other higher priorities. If you can't attack the marked enemy for some reason, either they die because they're made of paper, or it's a human encounter where you drag to select skills. You can use Dawn's defense to instantly get her to unlock 1 at the cost of some consequence, making her squishier. Don't worry about actually activating the counter. The unlock gaining effect is combat start, not on use, so it'll happen regardless of the counter actually being used. Turn 2 is similar to turn 1, but make sure you actually hit your skill this time, as the prescript requires you to hit. If you can't and you really want the next unlock stage, use her defense. Just be careful not to stack too much consequence. Turn 3 is the skill 3 or ego turn. If you have a marked skill 3 on this turn, great, use it and become god. If you don't, then you want to use an ego instead. Your choices are a bit more limited, or less limited, I guess. Point is, Dawn doesn't really have any ego that has a passive or on-use effect that is useful to her or her team in both sinking and poise. So your best bet is to just use her base ego, as it costs the least resources and is easily fueled. If, by some unfortunate consequence, you don't have the resources for an ego, due to using another ego, or just being roughed up and not getting the required resources, you can opt to use her counter. This will finish your last cycle, getting you to 9 Grace, unlock 3, and granting you Shin. At this point, Dawn has fully scaled her buffs, and she can go wild. She'll consistently build poise and inflict a good amount of sinking. Just be careful, as she is sinking count negative on all of her skills, so be sure to use her smartly if you're trying to keep the sinking stack healthy. The next question on the table would be team comps then. Where does Dawn fit in all of this? Well, much like Faust, she can comfortably go into either poise or sinking. Let's start with poise this time and go to sinking after. Once again, poise is less of a coherent team, and more of just a bunch of people who like poise. Dawn quite comfortably slots into just about any poise-related team, and works wonders. Her poise generation starts slow but builds up quickly, and by turn 4, she can gain poise better than most of the older IDs that make use of the same status. Running Dawn in a team with Faust, index or not, allows her to easily keep her poise stack up thanks to Thoracalgia. Nothing really changes with how you play Dawn in this team, just that she does what she does really well and easily. Moving on to sinking, we'll look at Dawn in the 3 sinking team variations again. First, Deluge. Dawn suffers from similar issues to Faust when it comes to sinking Deluge teams. Not enough sinking, no positive sinking count skills. She doesn't immediately provide the sinking that a Deluge team wants, and thus isn't really worth running in Deluge. Second is Butterfly. Again, similar to Faust, Dawn would work quite well in a Butterfly team due to her high coin amount and decent sinking application. Her skill 3-2 being 4 coins let her proc lots of Butterfly for consistent and decent damage, so slotting her into a Butterfly team isn't a bad idea. Index Dawn is considered a general side grade or upgrade to Wei Dawn in sinking Butterfly teams, as both Dawns share extremely similar sinking application and coin amounts. Wei Dawn benefits from inflicting Shattermark with her skill 3 to increase Gluttony and Gloom damage taken from skills, while Index Dawn generally is more of a powerhouse, physical damage and skill power wise, thanks to her poise and easy scaling. Both work, but I generally prefer Index Dawn due to the team that I personally run. The last is with Index Yi Sang. Running Dawn with Yi Sang actually has a unique benefit that buffs Dawn even further in the form of a buff called Desire for Acknowledgement Sated. The buff itself gives Dawn a 15% damage increase, more or less, so running the Nurse Father and the Apprentice together is not a bad idea. And that's Index Dawn. Seems complex on the surface, but is actually quite simple once you take a closer look. A similarity she shares with Faust. Now we'll move on to our last currently available Index identity, the House of Spiders, the Index Nurse Father, Yi Sang. Yi Sang's section won't be shorter than Dawn's because this man is a whole thing. Being a Nurse Father and based on the final boss of Canto 9, he has quite an interesting, unique and powerful kit. Much of it is similar to the other 2 Index identities, but much of it is distinct from them, using existing mechanics in different ways, new effects, and gaining distinct powerful benefits for utilizing his kit correctly. So let's jump right into it. Yi Sang's stats are all above average, having above average health, speed, and a natural +2 to his defense level. Just like the other Index, he's strong against Slash, but weak to Pierce. His skills consist of a 2-coin Gluttony skill 1, a 3-coin Pride skill 2, a 4-coin Gloom skill 3, a 9-coin Wrath skill 3-2, and a Gloom dodge. One of these things is not like the others, eh? But we'll get there when we get there. Like the others, I'll be focusing on his passives first before jumping into detail about his skills, because there's a lot, and his skills are heavily affected by one passive in particular. His first passive, Prescript Delivered on a Device, is a carbon copy of Dawn's passive with a similar name. Every detail is the same, except it lacks the Shin portion of Dawn's passive. Yi Sang's third Prescript also differs from the others, being more tailored towards his kit, but I'll talk more about it when we talk about the individual effects themselves. Yi Sang's second passive, the Oracle's Proxy / Unlock, is also very similar to Dawn's. I will only mention the relevant differences. Yi Sang heals SP every time he executes his third Prescript, up until finishing it where he gains the final 3 graces and a larger SP heal. Similarly, Yi Sang does not gain Karmic Consequence when attempting to execute his Prescripts, but couldn't. This, however, does not apply to his third Prescript, or when he has unlocked 2, which is the same thing. If Yi Sang does not execute his third Prescript, regardless of he was unable to or not, he will gain Karmic Consequence. At unlock 3, gain Shin Fate. His third passive, the Index Nurse Father, is always active, requiring no Eagle resources to activate. The effects are: upon entering the encounter for the first time, gain Wound Casing Mask. Turn end, if this unit was staggered for the first time in this encounter, under this effect, recover from stagger except for forced stagger and convert Wound Casing Mask into Sizzling Wound. Apply Desire for Acknowledgement Sated to Index Dawn when both units are on the field. His fourth passive, yet we're not done yet, is Oracle Device Caduceus. This passive is arguably the most important, or second most important in his entire kit, so let's go over it. A random weapon is assigned to every coin for base attack skills. Each weapon has a unique effect. Normally I save the effects for after the passives, but I want to go into each weapon individually right now to further emphasize how interesting and important this passive is. When hacking through the ribs with a hatchet, this coin deals blunt damage, and on hit, without cracking, gain 2 poise. When penetrating the lungs with a stiletto, this coin deals pierce damage, and on hit without cracking, inflict 2 sinking. When cleaving through the shoulder and the skull with a bastard sword, this coin deals 5% more and slash damage. On hit without cracking, gain 1 offense level up next turn, up to 2 times per turn. When punching 10 or more holes in the torso with a rapier, this coin deals 5% more and pierce damage. On hit without cracking, inflict 1 defense level down next turn, up to 2 times per turn. When caving in the back of the skull with a hammer, this coin deals 5% more and blunt damage. On a hit without cracking, raise the target's stagger threshold by 3. When rending the body with a greatsword, this coin deals 15% more and slash damage. On a hit without cracking, inflict 1 slash fragility up until next turn, up to 2 times per turn. When boring a 20-inch hole with a lance, this coin deals 15% more damage and pierce damage. On a hit without cracking, inflict 1 pierce fragility until next turn, up to 2 times per turn. When ripping the flesh to 10,000 strips with a whip, this coin deals 15% more and blunt damage. On hit without cracking, inflict 1 blunt fragility up until next turn, up to 2 times per turn. When lacerating through space itself with a scythe, like a certain someone, this coin deals slash damage and 30% more damage. On hit without cracking, it is a guaranteed hit. Now, if you were paying attention, you'll notice that it specifies a damage type per effect, an effect that individually gets applied per coin. That means that each individual coin has its own separate damage type, regardless of the damage type the skill says it is. Your slash skill 3 with 4 coins might deal blunt damage for each coin, or pierce, or a mix of both, or maybe only slash. You get it. While Yi Sang's skills tend to increase the chance of getting the correct damage type, it's not guaranteed. This passive also allows him to inflict a various amount of fragilities and debuffs, thereby improving the damage of the rest of his team. The rest of the passive is as follows. Gain 1 Procuration Hermes when using skills with the mark of the Prescript. Convert Wound Casing Mask to Sizzling Wound at the end of the turn if this unit used Furioso Replica for the first time in this encounter. Turn start, if this unit has Sizzling Wound and has Furioso Replica on the dashboard, gain Indulgence in Prescripts. Lots of new effects here, all very important, and things we'll get to after his passives. His fifth, Jesus Christ, passive is called Imitation of a Life. It requires 1 Gluttony, 1 Gloom, and 1 Pride each to activate. Yi Sang gains the usual damage increase from Graces, up to 20%. On hit with base attack skills Unbreakable coins, gain 1 Procreation Hermes. Attack end, gain Procuration equal to the number of remaining Unbreakable coins. Furioso Replica attack end, gain Procuration next turn equal to half the remaining Unbreakable coins. If Procuration Hermes reached 9 stacks at turn end, and if this unit does not have a skill 3 on the dashboard at the start of the next turn, convert a base skill to skill 3, prioritizing the leftmost skill on the bottom row. This passive is extremely important to get up and running as soon as humanly possible. Your main goal, turn 1 with Yi Sang, is getting this passive up so that he generates as much procuration as possible, as fast as possible, so that Yi Sang gains access to his skill 3-2 in a timely manner. His 6th and final passive is his support passive, Grace of God. It has the same cost as his normal passive and allows allies to deal 5% more damage with skills of each damage type that are used for the first time in each turn. It's alright, nothing game breaking, but running Yi Sang as a support seems strange when you could have him on the field. Let's move on to each of the individual effects that is unique to Yi Sang that I haven't covered yet. Yi Sang's 3rd prescript requires him to gain procuration every turn, and repeats the prescript until he reaches 9 procuration. This is different from the usual use a skill 3 or an ego, prescript 3, as it requires him to gain his unique resource and cannot be completed in a single turn or a use of a defense skill. Procuration Hermes is Yi Sang's unique resource. At turn start, if Yi Sang has 9 stacks, a powerful skill, his skill 3-2, becomes available. If Yi Sang does not have at least unlocked 2, aka 6 graces, this effect's maximum stack is limited to 8, meaning that if you forgo doing prescripts for some reason and stack up procuration, you won't be able to gain access to Furioso Replica. At unlock 3, Yi Sang gains Shin Fate. This effect gives him 1 extra min and max speed, lets him gain 1 more poise, potency and count from all of his skills, and deal more damage to enemies based on the SP difference between him and the enemy, up to 15%, with non-SP units being considered at 0 SP. This Shin is quite good, as it improves his speed and poise generation, letting him stack the effect up faster after losing it. The damage increase is also quite effective, especially in sinking teams, as Yi Sang is usually at max SP due to the SP healing he gets from the passives, and the enemy is usually at low SP due to the sinking infliction from Yi Sang and the rest of the team. When Yi Sang first enters an encounter, he gains Wound Casing Mask. This effect gives him 2 more offense level and lowers his defense level by 2. If you recall, Yi Sang has a natural +2 to his defense level, meaning this effect simply lowers it back down to the default of 60, or whatever the ID level is. He also takes 10% less damage from unopposed attacks. Sizzling Wound is gained when Yi Sang is staggered for the first time, or if he has used Furioso Replica for the first time. This effect replaces Wound Casing Mask when applied and grants him 3 offense level instead, while taking away 3 defense level. It allows him to take 25% less damage from unopposed attacks, which is quite good. At turn start, he gains 1 burn and 1 bleed. This effect also allows him to deal 15% more damage with base attack skills Unbreakable Coins, which is very nice. The burn and bleed applied by this passive is quite negligible. It can be a problem against enemies that stack up a lot of burn or bleed count on you, but rarely is. One annoyance about the burn being applied to Yi Sang is that burn can stagger you. If you used Furioso Replica while still having your first stagger threshold, you gain Sizzling Wound and lose the ability to undo the first stagger applied to you. Certain bosses in later cantos do damage that don't stagger the sinner being attacked, but leaves their health under the stagger threshold. If this sinner happens to be Yi Sang, he gets staggered at the end of the turn anyway, due to the burn. It doesn't come up that often, but when it does, it is quite annoying. Indulgence in prescripts is gained when Yi Sang has Sizzling Wound, and has access to his skill 3-2. It gives him quite a hefty buff for the turn that you use Furioso on. It gives him a min and max speed increase of 5 by default. For Furioso specifically, it applies more sinking or poise and inflicts a flat 3 count on the first hit of the skill, while also giving him a juicy 30% more damage with it, turning it into a field clearing nuke. Theoretically, if you have Indulgence, you can forgo using Furioso and permanently keep the +5 to speed, but not using Furioso is basically going against everything you worked for on this character, and it hits like a freight train, so I don't really recommend doing this. With all of his unique effects done, we can move on to his actual skills. Thankfully he only has 5, unlike his apprentice who had 8. His first skill, Enwrap 330 times in Dong Swathes of Frozen Blood, is a gluttony skill with 2 coins. It has a base power of 3 and a coin power of 4, rolling up to an 11 with heads and a 16 while clashing, or a 15 while hitting, with conditionals active. This skill gains an increased chance, 75% at base, to produce a blunt weapon. This chance is reduced by Karmic Consequence, potentially lowering the chance down to 25% at 100 stacks. If this attack rolls a blunt weapon with its coins, it deals 15% more damage with those coins. If this skill is marked, it gains 1 clash power and deals 20% more damage. Yi Sang gains coin power based on poise and sinking. On use, it converts a number of coins equal to the current unlock level -1 into unbreakable coins, starting with the final coin. This means that at unlock 0 and 1, none of the coins will be unbreakable. At unlock 2, the last coin will be unbreakable, and at unlock 3, both will be unbreakable. On use, Yi Sang gains 2 poise count, and on hit with the second coin, he gains 2 poise. If the coin was used to attack without cracking, effectively without losing the clash, it also inflicts 2 sinking. Yi Sang's second skill is Revel with Soundless Applause, Impale in Voiceless Sorrow. It's a pride skill with 3 coins. With a base power of 4 and a coin power of 4, it rolls up to a 16 or a 22 with all conditionals. This skill gains an increased chance, 75% at base, to produce a pierce weapon. This chance is also reduced by Karmic Consequence. If this attack rolls a pierce weapon on its coins, it deals 15% more damage with those coins. If this skill is marked, it gains 1 final power. This skill gains coin power based on poise and sinking. On use, it converts a number of coins equal to the current unlock into unbreakable coins, starting with the last coin. On use, Yi Sang gains 3 poise potency. Its coins inflict 3 sinking and grant Yi Sang 2 poise count, with the final coin inflicting an extra sinking count if it wasn't cracked. Yi Sang's skill 3-1 is called Raise and Laugh the Blade. Cry the waterfall like the scent of fallen leaves. Whatever the fuck that means. It's a Gloom skill with 4 coins. It has a base power of 4 and a coin power of 3, rolling up to a 16 without conditionals and a 24 with. At turn start, if Yi Sang has 9 procuration, replace this skill with Furioso Replica. This effect prioritizes the skill on the leftmost slot's bottom row on the dashboard. This skill gains an increased chance, 75% at base, to produce a slash weapon, and like the others, this chance is reduced by Karmic Consequence. If this attack rolls a slash weapon on its coins, it deals 25% more damage with those coins. If this skill is marked, it deals 20% more damage. This skill gains coin power based on poise and sinking. On use, it converts a number of coins equal to the current unlock +1 into unbreakable coins, starting with the last coin. This means that 1 coin will always be unbreakable, even at unlock 0, turning the rest into unbreakables as you gain more unlock. On use, Yi Sang gains 3 poise count and poise equal to his unlock, up to 3. The coins inflict a total of 3 sinking and 3 poise, with the final coin gaining an extra poise count on crit, and inflicting 3 sinking count if it isn't cracked. The final coin also deals 20% more damage for every unlock stage, up to 60%. Yi Sang's skill 3-2 is Furioso Replica. Not quite the Black Silence, but good enough. It's a Wrath skill with 9 fucking coins. With a base power of 3 and a coin power of 3, this skill rolls up to a very funny 30, becoming even funnier with conditionals and rolling up to a 35 when clashing or a 32 when attacking. This skill has 7 attack weight, but has unfocused volley. This means that each coin can only hit a single target instead of hitting every target at once. Only 1 copy of this skill can exist on the dashboard. If this skill is marked, deal 10% more damage. This skill's coin power doesn't change. Instead, for every net coin power increase, gain 5 final power and deal 25% more damage. Furioso is also completely unaffected by the Paralyze status effect. This skill gains final power based on poise on self and sinking, specifically on the main target, up to 2. At combat start, you convert all the coins of this skill into unbreakable coins. The coins are probably not unbreakable by default to prevent some sort of shenanigans in mirror dungeons. Inflict 1 sinking or gain 1 poise with every hit of this skill. Yi Sang cannot gain procuration for the turn that he uses Furioso. So if Yi Sang has multiple slots, uses Furioso and then other skills, those other skills will not gain any procuration. On use, gains 3 clash power for free, yay, and also gains 3 poise and 3 poise count. On attack end, basically after using the final coin, inflict 5 burn, 3 bind and 3 fragile next turn to all targets this unit hit, and consume all procuration. Small fun fact, Rien, the final boss of Canto 9, and the character this identity is based on, inflicts 5 bleed with his Furioso instead of burn. This is identical to Roland in Library of Rena, who also inflicts 5 bleed, 3 bind, and 3 fragile next turn when using Furioso. Yi Sang is just not as good at copying as Ren is, I guess. Moving on. The very final 9th coin of this skill is always fixed to produce the Scythe, and deals 90% more damage on a critical hit. If you remember, the Scythe's effect is that it always crits, meaning the extra 90% damage is always applied. The final coin also applies 3 sinking count, because you're awesome. If we apply the effects of Indulgence in Prescripts to this skill, it instead gains or inflicts 2 poise or sinking on each hit, and inflicts a total of 6 sinking count if attacking a single target, while dealing another 30% more damage. Getting to use Furioso with Indulgence in Prescripts is rare, however, since it requires you to be staggered early or scale up to a second Furioso use after using it once. Theoretically, if RNG serves you well, the highest amount of damage you can do with this skill is quite staggering if you manage to roll the Greatsword on both of the first coins, thereby inflicting the 2 slash fragility limit, and then rolling the Scythe on the rest of the coins. It will do an insane amount of damage. However, that actually happening is out of our control and very, very unlikely. I just thought it'd be a fun fact. Finally, his defense is a Gloom dodge called By Unpredictable Whim. It is a base power of 4 and a coin power of 10, rolling a 14 or a 16 with conditionals. At combat start, Yi Sang gains 2 poise count. When Yi Sang successfully evades a coin, he gains 2 poise potency. Similarly to Don, Yi Sang can use his defense to force his unlock to a higher level, although his forces his unlocked all the way to 2, regardless of the current unlock level, but cannot force it to unlock 3 like Don. This means that Yi Sang can only gain unlock 3 by completing his 3rd prescript to its last stage, which means that he must gain access to Furioso to gain access to unlock 3 and subsequently his Shin. So, evidently Yi Sang is a bit different and potentially more complex to play compared to his Index co-workers. To help alleviate any doubts or confusion, let's get right into talking about how Index Yi Sang plays and how to make effective use of his kit. Just like the other Index, Yi Sang focuses on stacking poise on himself and inflicting sinking on the enemy, benefiting from both equally. His poise and sinking application is decent, not amazing, but decent, from the get-go, allowing him to be an immediate asset to the team. Being sinking, Index Yi Sang immediately has competition with Solemn Lament Yi Sang and Spicebush Yi Sang, as the latter two are team-defining sinking identities with entire compositions being built around and making use of their unique effects related to sinking. Solemn Lament has Butterfly, which causes sinking to deal actual damage to opponents with SP and increasing the damage sinking does to opponents without SP. Spicebush is the only identity in the game that has access to Sinking Deluge, a status that absorbs all the sinking on the one that he's attacking and deals sinking count times potency gloom damage to the opponent. This means that Sinking Deluge can potentially deal up to 9,801 gloom damage, even more if the enemy is weak to gloom. So, what does Index Yi Sang bring to the table to rival these two titans of sinking? Raw damage and consistency. Both Solemn Lament and Spicebush, without their unique sinking effects, are alright to good identities at best. They don't do a ton of damage, nor is their clashing all that remarkable. They are amazing identities due to their effect on the sinking stack. Index Yi Sang, meanwhile, does the opposite, focusing on increasing his raw damage with a high amount of coins, damage conditionals, and poise from critical hits. Index Yi Sang can and will consistently outroll and outdamage everyone else in the sinking team, dealing monstrous amounts of damage in longer fights. The downside? The rest of the sinking team can no longer benefit from a unique sinking effect, and therefore loses overall damage, while Index Yi Sang takes a while to become a genuine asset to the team. Index Yi Sang is a side grade to the other sinking Yi Sangs rather than an upgrade, so it's up to you to decide what type of team you really want to run. Stepping away from his peers, let's take a look at how Index Yi Sang plays in a vacuum. Like Don, I'll take a look at his various actions and choices on a turn-by-turn basis, starting with turn 1 and ending at turn 6. Turn 5 is the earliest he can gain Furioso, if Hermes is smiling upon you, but turn 6 has some interesting facts and additions to its game plan that I want to discuss regardless. The very first turn is arguably also the most important, depending on your team. I say it's dependent on your team because of one singular thing: Gluttony. To activate Yi Sang's passive, you need 1 Gloom, 1 Pride, and 1 Gluttony. His passive is paramount to gaining procuration quickly. If it isn't active, you are only able to gain 1 procuration per turn. If you were to take a look at the various sinking and poise identities currently in the game, the more recent additions or generally good identities for their status lack gluttony skills. There are certainly identities that do have gluttony and fit into a sinking or poise team, but generally they're few and far between and can be slotted out for better options. So this leaves you with one sinner that always has gluttony, and that is Yi Sang. Due to how the mark of the Prescript system works, it introduces a bit of a dilemma. If you say, for example, start combat and Yi Sang has access to his skill 1, which is gluttony, and a skill 2, which is pride, but the skill 2 is mark, you have to make a choice. Do you A. follow the will of the Prescript and use the marked skill, foregoing activating his passive by using different skills with other sinners, but gaining his first level of unlock, 3 graces and at least 1 procuration? Or B. ignore the Prescript and instead use his skill 1 to gain a gluttony for his all-important passive, foregoing gaining unlock and graces? Neither are optimal, unfortunately. Ultimately, you want to start with a marked skill 1 to avoid this whole fiasco, but this is the first appearance of a rather unfortunate head behind Yi Sang's kit, RNG. We'll get more into that later. Let's continue assuming you got lucky and had a marked skill 1 on your first turn, with the other sinners managing to use at least 1 gloom and 1 pride skill. By turn 2, you'll have unlock 1, 3 graces and your passive active. With unlock 1, your skill 2 now has 1 unbreakable coin and your skill 3 has 2. Turn 2 isn't as defining as turn 1. If possible, use a marked skill 2 or 3, but using a marked skill 1 again still makes it possible to get Furiosa on turn 5. On turn 3, you'll have unlock 2 and 6 graces, turning a decent amount of your coins on your skills unbreakable and speeding up your procreation gains even more. You might think by this point that it might have been a good idea to start the fight with a dodge, assuming you had someone else gain gluttony, to instantly boost you to unlock 2 and immediately increase your procuration gain. This is untrue. Going for a defensive skill use in a fight where Yi Sang only has 1 skill slot will always be the same speed as simply doing your prescripts normally. That, and you gain Karmic Consequence, which lowers your chance of producing the correct weapon type on skills, inadvertently lowering your overall damage. The amount of procuration you can gain a turn is also capped either way, being your current unlock level plus 2. I will display what a 5-turn cycle looks like, assuming optimal marks and passive active turn 2 on screen, and you'll see the amount you end up with is the exact same. Moving on from that, we have turn 4. By this point, you should have somewhere between 5 or 7 procuration. That means you're close to getting Furioso. So just use whatever you like that isn't an ego and gain access to your strongest skill next turn. On turn 5, if everything went correctly, you'll have Furiosa Replica available to use. Go ahead and use it and watch Yi Sang clash God and win. Deal upwards of 800 damage to a single target, or eviscerate a group and become even stronger on subsequent turns. If you got unlucky with your marked skills and couldn't get Furiosa by turn 5, it's really not the end of the world. At most, it'll take you maybe 2 turns to get it. It's a loss in damage and the general speed of a fight, but unless you're speedrunning, it's not that bad, so it's fine. On turn 6, Yi Sang gains Sizzling Wound, Shin, Fate, and Unlock 3. These are all amazing, but ironically, Unlock 3 is almost the best part. Yi Sang's procuration gain and unbreakable coin amounts are determined by his unlock. Up until now, you could only gain 4 procuration a turn, and a single coin on every skill is still not unbreakable. Now that you have unlocked 3, every coin on every skill is unbreakable, and your procuration per turn limit has increased to 5, meaning that you can potentially gain another use of Furiosa Replica in as little as 2 turns if you manage to get a skill 3 usage on this turn or the next. Now let me touch on what I mentioned earlier, RNG. Index Yi Sang is, unfortunately, quite reliant on good RNG for his skill marks. If you get unlucky and you don't have the correct skills marked, your time until Furioso gets extended by a turn, if not more. This really doesn't feel too good when it does happen. You might think to use these unmarked skill 2 or 3s anyway, once you reach unlock 2, because they have more unbreakable coins. But a marked skill 1 gains just as much procuration as a marked skill 2. Same for a marked skill 2 and an unmarked skill 3. At best, you could use an unmarked skill 3 over a marked skill 1, but at that point it might just be better to use the marked skill 1 and hope the skill 3 becomes unmarked next turn. This can lead to a frustrating experience that can't really be solved by just resetting, as it takes multiple turns to really see if your cycle is fucked. My advice? Just don't worry about it and follow the prescript. It's okay, nothing will go wrong. All you need to do is follow the prescript. Just do what the prescript says and everything will be alright. Anyway, that's how Yi Sang mostly plays in a vacuum. Now the question on our minds will be, what team does he fit into? And wow, would you look at that, he fits into a sinking and poise teams. In poise, yep, you guessed it, he works. He has good poise generation from the get-go, does 1 billion damage and makes Dawn even stronger, generates good resources, the whole shebang. Run him in poise. In sinking, he also works. He inflicts a good sinking potency and some count on his skills. All of his skills are negative on count, however, so keep that in mind when selecting your attacks and planning out your turns. Running him alongside Dawn, which is probably something you want to do, means that you will have 2 relatively negative count IDs in your team. If you want to run both of them in your team, I heavily recommend running identities that inflict a lot of count easily, to make dropping your stack more difficult and less likely. This is generally the team I run for Yi Sang, both in sinking and poise. The sinking team has a couple of Walpurgis identities, so I'll show some alternatives. But there is one certain sinking unit that I heavily suggest that you get and use, regardless if you're planning on running sinking in just about any form. It's Knight of Despair Rhodia. Get Knight of Despair Rhodia, she's insane. And that's Index Yi Sang, one of the strongest identities in the game right now. Honestly, he and any of the other Index identities are incredibly self-sufficient. So if you are a new player that happened to pull them, don't worry too much about catering to their specific team comp desires. Just slap them on your team and watch them do work. Now for a quick overview and final thoughts on the Index. I'll take a quick look at them as a whole, how they function in a team together and as a faction, so to speak, and then give you my final thoughts on them. If you run all of the Index units on a single team, you'll run into a consistent issue of them all wanting to target the same unit or part of a boss. If it's a boss that only has a single part, like Rien or Lei Heng, then it's not a problem. But if it's a fight with multiple parts, like an abnormality, your Index units will usually end up doing a couple of unopposed attacks, which means that they or other units might be taking a couple of unopposed attacks. It's not a huge problem and one that should be gone by the time you get to turn 3 or 4, but the Index consistently gain a good damage increase from attacking the Prescript's target. So even if they are all done being absolutely required to attack the target, it's still a good idea to maybe let an attack fly here or there, just for that extra bit of damage. Just make sure your other teammates don't get staggered or die. Since all 3 of them rely and benefit from poise, they can all also benefit from Faust's Thoracalgia, giving you even more of a reason to use it as soon as possible. In Mirror Dungeon, you can run all 3 of them as the core of a sinking poise team, alongside some other units to complete the 5 required identities for each fusion gift. It's a team I like to run often for getting to extreme with 60 adversity. They all also benefit from a certain hidden boss's eco gift if you're lucky enough to get it. And that's the Index. If you couldn't tell by the fact that this video is long as balls, and is also the first of my Limbus videos, yes, the Index is currently my favorite faction in the game, and these 3 are some of my favorite identities in the game, with Index Yi Sang taking the top spot. They're all very powerful identities, with Yi Sang and Dawn being some of the strongest in the game right now. Faust isn't breaking any records, but she definitely outshines a majority of older identities in the game, and functions just as well. If you do happen to randomly pull any of them or are hesitant on sharding them, I'm here to give you my full endorsement. If the entire video explaining how they work wasn't enough and you for some reason needed my endorsement. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a like and a sub. I'll most likely be making more Limbus content from here on out, probably mostly identity guides to newer and beloved identities, so look forward to it. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.